Hey everyone, it's John Heath here again for Milton Rose Learning with another Let's Learn video on the poem Tissue by Imtiaz Dharker. So what we're going to look at today is we are going to look at the key context underpinning this poem, and I think that's needed because a lot of students find this poem a little bit conceptually dense and quite tricky. Then we'll do a quick poetry reading and just get a feel for the kind of for the poem itself and the language choices, and then we'll round off by giving you some of the anchor kind of annotations which are going to anchor your notes in your anthology. Okay then, so without further ado, let's dive in then. So obviously this is quite a conceptually deep poem, so let's get into the context first. Now this poem very much is about cultural identity and fragility as well. The poem reflects Dharker's experiences growing up between cultures, so exploring how fragile human constructs such as borders, buildings, religious texts, all those kinds of things are compared to nature. So we need to just think that through for a minute. So things such as, say, a border between two countries, we tend to think, oh yeah, that's kind of very serious and it's kind of etched in stone and it will never move. But borders are fragile themselves, aren't they? In history, they've moved, they've been kind of invaded over borders. They're just human constructs. They can change at any point. Likewise with buildings, they look like very solid and things like that, but buildings change. They get demolished. They get, they get change of use. From, say, a house might get turned into a doctor's surgery or something like that. So she's reflecting on our identity and cultural identity, but also how fragile that is and how things change. Okay, and we'll try and tease that out when we read the poem. Tissue also examines power and control, so how power is exercised through architecture, documents and money, but also how these can be fragile and temporary. Okay, so governments especially like to assert their power with monuments and with the buildings that they build to seem permanent, but that doesn't last, does it? Buildings, fall down, buildings kind of erode. Money has meaning, yes, of course it does, but when we die, it has no meaning anymore. All of those kinds of things. It's the transience of kind of power and how nothing really lasts, even though governments do try to assert their power and control. Then also there is a bit of a spiritual and human connection element to this poem. So Dharker contrasts human-made materials with natural elements, and that suggests a deeper, more lasting connection beyond physical structures. We can build a beautiful kind of house or a palace or something like that, but it's all man-made and it won't last, and it dissolves into nothing, doesn't it? If you've ever saw like castles and stuff that have fell apart and things like that, whereas nature seems eternal, it just seems to regenerate itself constantly. So very, very deep, very, very deep. She's got a lot on her mind, this poet. So let's have a little look and see, and we'll just tease out a few points as we do a bit of a poetry reading. Okay, so let's do the first 4 stanzas. I think would be quite nice first. Paper that lets the light shine through, this is what could alter things. Paper thinned by age or touching, the kind you find in well-used books, the back of the Koran, the Islamic holy text obviously, where a hand has written in the names and histories who was born to whom. So here, let's just unpick this. She's using paper, obviously, as a metaphor, because paper as a material is extremely fragile. You can just rip it in your hands. But look at the kind of the functions that paper is fulfilling. It's used in holy books, such as the Koran, which have been around for centuries and keep religion, or the religion of Islam, going, and let it kind of carry on in some ways, but also talking about history books as well. So that paper, by writing on the paper, it allows people to live on and historical figures. Third stanza. The height and weight, who died where and how, on which sepia date, pages smoothed and stroked and turned transparent with attention. If buildings were paper, So we have a real shift here in this stanza. If buildings were paper, I might feel their drift, see how easily they fall away on a sigh, a shift in the direction of the wind. So building seems relatively permanent and solid, even though they're not. Maps too. The sun shines through their borderlines, the marks that rivers make, roads, rail tracks, mountain folds. So again, talking about the element of paper on a map, you can see the image there. You know, it makes us reflect on the fragility of it all. None of the stuff on the map will last. You know, borders and stuff will change over time, for instance. Next stanza. Find slips from grocery shops that say how much was sold and what was paid by credit card might fly our lives like paper kites. An architect could use all this. Place layer over layer, luminous script over numbers, over line, and never wish to build again with brick or block. But let the daylight break through capitals and monoliths, through the shapes that pride can make, find a way to trace a grand design with living tissue, raise a structure never meant to last, of paper, smoothed and stroked and thinned to be transparent, turned into your skin. So it's kind of getting into there the idea that all of the paper and things like maps and the holy books and whatever, they're all part of almost our DNA. They're part of our skin, because all of those bits of paper, such as money and religious books and whatever, they all go into the human experience and they make us who we are, if that makes sense. Very profound though, very, very deep. Okay. Now, let's tease out a little bit more as well through the annotations, because this poem is a tricky one. It's not an easy poem to analyse. So, the opening lines, paper that lets the light shine through. So obviously it's a metaphor here. Paper represents the fragility and human life, and the transparency of the paper, because the light is shining through it, suggests openness and vulnerability, okay, or human vulnerability. I interpret it as like almost human mortality, like nothing lasts and humans don't last either. So that's why we try and print things in books and things like that to try and create a sense of permanence. It also creates symbolism and hope at the start. So the light shining through implies insight, truth, or even spiritual enlightenment. Light is generally a good thing symbolically in poems, and you always want to analyse that symbolism at the start. Then number 2, we have reference to control and authority. So the kind you find in well-used books. So here we have imagery and tactile language. So it conveys human knowledge, culture, and the memory is preserved in fragile forms, because a book, it does give a bit of permanence, doesn't it? Because a book is, books can go on for hundreds of years, but they're still quite fragile. They can be burnt, they can be ripped, they can be lost, all of those kinds of things, along with all the human knowledge contained therein. Okay. Fragility versus permanence. So it contrasts the temporary nature of paper with the enduring power of ideas, because this is a very complicated thing. The book might die or get burnt or get lost, but the ideas contained within the book and on the paper should live, can live forever potentially, as long as somebody can maintain them in their head. So it's that permanence versus kind of transience. Also, life and mortality is kind of touched on, I think, in some of the annotations. So maps too. The sun shines through their borderlines. So it's a metaphor, I would argue. So maps symbolise human attempts to control or define life. We draw borders on land, don't we, and go, that's the border between that country and that country. We're trying to control nature in some ways. But it's light and fragile. It shows that human boundaries are permeable and temporary. If you study history, you'll know that borders move all the time. Okay, they're always subject to kind of change, and that reflects human mortality and impermanence. It's almost a metaphor for kind of human mortality, and we just don't last, and neither do borders. Then we have a line towards the end. It is the ending line actually. Turned into your skin. all of this paper and the things that it symbolizes turning to our skin. So again, it's a transformation kind of metaphor. The paper, the maps, the records, all of our money become human experience. Our life is lived in paper in a weird way. The intimacy between life and memory is kind of explored there. But also, again, it's the fragility of life. So it suggests that life and memory are delicate. The skin is very delicate. It's very thin, isn't it? It kind of, although I know there's different layers of our derma, but on the surface, skin does seem very, very thin. The physicality of skin also emphasizes human vulnerability, but also our identity. Your skin is your skin. It's very personal to you. The tone is personal to you as well. And it kind of makes us reflect on our own cultural and kind of ethnic identity at the end. And all of the paper, books and maps and records and money and stuff have gone into making us who we are and our cultural identities. Okay, so you can see that was a deep one. That was a deep one. Okay, tissue is always a conceptually very rich poem. But hopefully we've just started to open the door for you there into the poem and kind of what it's kind of all about, really. So don't forget to hit the like, subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss another Let's Learn video again. Share with your friends, that would be really, really helpful to us. We really appreciate it. Any comments, please do. Just pop them on YouTube and we'll always do our best to reply. And it just remains to say that poem is a real head scratcher, but just keep going with it and you'll be absolutely fine. Hopefully you've enjoyed that. Take care and we'll see you soon.